House will come back to order. The House will come back to order. It is 1:40 p.m. and we have yet to pass a bill on the rules calendar today. So we're going to fix that very quickly here. Clerk will ring the bell. Clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing and commending Holiday Helping Hands Incorporated, recognizing and commending Victoria Hill, the winner of the 60th anniversary Miss Cobb County pageant. Recognizing and commending Carly Vogel, Miss Cobb County's outstanding teen, commending Boy Scout Troop 629, commending Chief Neely M. McCormick Jr., recognizing and commending Janie McKeesey, honoring Tax Commissioner Gregory Baker for his outstanding public service, recognizing and commending Dr. Steve Parker, Georgia's 2018 School Superintendent of the Year, commending Lauren York, Dallas Spratt, Isabella Pete Olson, Kelsey Garcia, and Kelly White Bryant of Lumpkin County High School, commending the Georgia peanut industry and recognizing March 12, 2018 as Peanut Butter and Jelly Day at the state capitol, recognizing and commending Rodney D. Bullard, recognizing and commending Sonny Badu, commending and congratulating Kyle Tur Dupree, commending Malcolm J. Mitchell, and recognizing March 7, 2018 as Children's Literacy Day at the state capitol, commending the Kappa Deuteron chapter of the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity at the University of Georgia on its 50th anniversary, honoring Frank Navarez Jr. for saving the life of a fellow schoolmate, commending Ann Thornton Wilkinson, Pates Creek's Elementary School Teacher of the Year, commending Sylvia Gardner, Adamson Middle School's Teacher of the Year, commending Lisa Dorsey, Morrow Middle School's Teacher of the Year, and for other purposes, that completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. We are now going to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 840.
House Bill 840 by Representative Hitchens and the 161st and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 13 of Title 48, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to specific business and occupation taxes. This bill having referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hitchens to present the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think many of you remember about 2 years ago I came up here for a similar bill. This one is House Bill 840, but my district runs about 3 miles from the Hunter Army Airfield, and the 75th Ranger Battalion, which is some of the first people in and out of our combat zones, is located there. And I found out that when they were often activated and sent to some of the combat zones around the world, particularly Iraq and Afghanistan, some of the younger boys who lived on base would come back and they'd had their birthday and their car tags had expired and they were required to pay a 10% penalty. That bill passed unanimously, and just recently I had some people come to me from the 165th Airlift Wing, which is in my district. It's a National Guard unit, but they get activated and sent overseas all the time too. And what I didn't recognize when I did the last one is that many of those people are commercial airline pilots, but some of them are small business owners. And when they go over like that, some of their licenses expire because they stay up to 6 months. And when they come back, they have to pay a 15% penalty. So what this bill does is give them 60 days from the time that they come back from a combat zone as declared by an executive order of the President of the United States to pay that tax or that fee without incurring any penalty. And I'll yield for questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll always yield for you, Mr. Representative
You're a
Williams.
wise man, my friend.
I'm not so sure about that.
Is it not true that this bill will greatly impact military people all over this state, and it certainly solves a huge problem that now exists?
Well, I only know it from my area, but I think it probably covers a lot more people than I initially realized. The more I began to think about it, and the more activation, I think the J-Stars people at Robbins probably go through the same thing. They're National Guard personnel, and they fly over there all the time.
You have no further questions.
Well, I yield the will, and I appreciate your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 840 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 840. The ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 918. House Bill 918.
House Bill 918 by Representative F. Strachan and the 104th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to revenue and taxation so as defined terms Internal Revenue Code and Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and thereby incorporate certain provisions of the federal law into Georgia law. This bill having referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
The chair recognizes Representative F. Strachan to present the bill.
Thank you.
Just a minute.
Yes, sir.
Representative. The member is about to present what is known as a bill. Some of you may want to hear the presentation. And if you don't, I have suggestions where you can go take your meetings. But the noise level is not acceptable. The House will be in order. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today I'm proud to bring to you House Bill 918, one of the largest cuts in the state income tax in the state of Georgia in our history. This bill will allow Georgians to keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their wallets. And it will do so while, number one, helping to further promote our state as the #1 state in the country to do business. Second, by helping to ensure that we maintain our AAA bond rating, which we've had for 20 years. And third, by ensuring that we are competitive from an economic development perspective with other states. And we're here today in thanks to the leadership and efforts of our governor, Nathan Deal, of our speaker, David Ralston, of Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, of the chairman of our Ways and Means Committee, Jay Powell, and from their tireless leadership throughout this process. House Bill 918 seeks to save Georgia taxpayers more than $5 billion over the next 5 years. And it does so by eliminating this, what has been called as the windfall that you might have read about in the media, that occurred or would occur following the passage of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act in December of 2017. This legislation includes both the 2017 and 2018 Internal Revenue Code updates for the state of Georgia. And it also includes the following. First of all, it will double the standard deduction for Georgians filing their tax returns for tax year 2018. Second, it will reduce the income tax rate, both individual and corporate, for tax year 2019 from 6% to 5.75%. For tax year 2020, it will reduce the income tax rate further from 5.75 to 5.5%. Now, in 2020, that will be subject to a resolution passed by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, what's being characterized as the trigger mechanism. House Bill 918 also eliminates much of the state sales tax on jet fuel by allowing Georgians to and will allow Georgia to remain competitive for economic development with states such as North Carolina and Texas that have zero state tax on jet fuel. This provision of the bill does not apply only to one company, and it does not apply only to one airport. In fact, this provision is supported by many airlines and companies, including Southwest Airlines, Allegiant Airlines, UPS, and the benefits that will be seen from Georgia's competitiveness will be across the board. The approach that's been outlined ensures that Georgia does not endanger its economic well-being in our state budget, and also makes clear that we have an intention to reduce the rate of taxes for Georgians. As I previously mentioned, this legislation is one of the largest income tax cuts in Georgia history. The individual income tax rate in Georgia has not been changed since 1937. The corporate income tax rate has not been changed from 6% since 1969. House Bill 918 is truly a momentous victory for the taxpayers of the state of Georgia, and I'm proud to present it to you here today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You've got a number of questions. Do you care to yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the committee from whence the bill came, Chairman Jay Powell, to your right for a question.
Yes.
So can you use Representative Lott's?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that there has been no change in the top rate since it was implemented in the 1930s?
Yes, sir, for the individual. income tax.
And isn't it true on the corporate tax rate, there's been no change in the last 25 or 30 years?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And this is the first change in either of those rates, and it's a lowering of the rate.
That's correct.
And isn't it also true that the estimates that we have seen are estimates only? Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And that they have varied between $3.5 billion over 5 years to approximately $5 billion over 5 years.
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
And so the reason that there's a trigger in here is that we are being fiscally responsible, but also letting the voters and citizens of this state know that if the projections turn out to be as estimated, that they are going to get the benefit of that tax cut.
Yes, sir. By passing House Bill 918, we're sending a clear message that we want to keep more hard-earned dollars in the pockets of Georgians.
Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you further yield for, you got a couple of chairmen or so?
Take maybe 2 more questions.
Chair recognizes the chair of the House Appropriations Committee, Chairman England, to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your hard work on this, and I'm fully in agreement with it and the measure and what we're doing here, and I want to applaud you, the Speaker, Governor, Chairman Powell, for the work that y'all have put into ensuring the fiscal health of our state going forward and being responsible in the way that this is being done, not just the initial tax cut, but also having the trigger in place going forward so that if everything materializes as some projections show, that we will be able to aid our citizens with some additional tax relief. So thank you for that. But is it not true also that we have all maintained or wanted to make sure that we maintain our AAA bond rating from all 3 rating agencies that we're so proud of, and that has been contemplated as well as this bill has been discussed, and that in doing so, that also saves our state citizens millions of dollars a year by maintaining that credit rating as well?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a responsible measure contemplating our AAA bond rating that we've maintained for 20 years, and I very much appreciate your leadership on this issue.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Transportation Committee, Chairman Tanner, to your right for a question.
This gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that at least one of our neighboring states has already set their jet fuel use and consumption tax at 0%, and other states around us that we compete with are looking at lowering their current rate?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is my understanding. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had a chance to speak with many members about this issue. At this time, I know there are other speakers who intend to speak. At this time, I will yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Chairman Martin to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, first, as I start these remarks, let me thank the Governor, the Speaker, the Ways and Means Chairman, and all of those that have worked together to give us this opportunity to avoid a large tax increase on our citizens, which would have happened because of unintended consequences of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Without this bill today, there is no doubt our citizens would experience a large tax increase. This isn't perfect for my district, and it's not perfect for any other district, particularly in the state of Georgia. I'd like to see more cuts, and I'd like to see them sooner. But this is a process, and our governor has done a good job by and for the people of this entire state. He has a responsibility for a whole budget, not like Washington, D.C., where they can just borrow money when they want to. He has a responsibility to balance the budget. And again, this bill as written will save Georgians millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars this year. And I urge you to support this process by supporting this measure. Respectfully, I also offer a challenge to continue in 2019 and beyond this process that we begin today, to continue to return monies to Georgians that may come into the state treasury as a result of the federal changes. I am optimistic about our state's future and our growing economy triggered by the tax relief in Washington and in this capital today. I believe it will allow us to continue to drive our rates downward and reduce the tax burden on Georgia. Most of you know that I'm a Georgia Bulldog. I bleed red and black. So as Coach Smart would say, let's attack the day today. Let's vote yes and start a process to lower taxes on Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Belton to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You may not know this, but I know just a little bit about jet fuel. I know some pilots, as you see, and they told me that about an airline, a particular airline that happens to be here in Atlanta, Georgia. And this airline, I can't remember its name off the top of my head, but I do know it's the largest private employer in Georgia. It has more Georgia employees than even Coca-Cola, which I heard is a big company. Now, this airline I'm speaking of, and I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, I forgot, I should have researched this better, but I do know it has a $41 billion revenue, operating revenue every year. That's $41 billion just circulating around the Georgia restaurants, hotels, and real estate and small businesses. This airline I know also is one of the most diverse employers in Georgia, hires folks from all around the world. It's one of the most generous employers in Georgia. I know that 1% of its income, not its profit, but its income is given to charity. So this really isn't a tax bill about jet fuel. It's really all about the children. Now, second largest expense of this particular airline is fuel. And because fuel taxes are so high in Georgia, the fourth highest in America, that many airlines fill up their airplanes in other states and then carry that fuel to Georgia. This technique is called tankering, and it's, you may not know, but it takes a lot of fuel to carry fuel. Every extra pound of gas you put in an airplane requires a lot more gas to burn that gas. Matter of fact, the weight of an airplane, believe it or not, changes by about 1/4 due to all the fuel that's in that airplane. Now, airplane travel is much safer and actually much more cost efficient than driving. If everyone got in a car and drove to like New York City, that takes a lot more gas than if folks got in an airplane. So this is not really a fuel tax bill. This is really a green industry bill, because all this tankering of fuel costs a lot more fuel and burns a lot more fuel, which is, of course, not good for the environment. Now, you may not know, but I travel all around the world, and I've been to Stockholm and Rome and London and Tokyo, and when we look at the departure board of the airports, I don't see Birmingham or Columbia. I don't see Nashville or Jacksonville. I see Atlanta. Atlanta is an alpha city. It's an international city because of the international airport here in Atlanta, an airport that generates $65 billion a year. That's $65 billion a year that is coming here to Georgia. I also know that Georgia, Atlanta, has the fourth most conventions in America, the fourth most conventions in America because of the Atlanta airport. Now, Atlanta, in a state that prides itself in low taxes, in a state that prides itself in being economically and environmentally friendly, and it cares about its children, I hope they'll consider how much jet fuel means to Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Chairman Earhart to speak to the bill. He waives. Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Whip, Representative Hughley, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I want to thank Representative Frustration and all who worked on this bill. But gee whiz, 48 hours and $5 billion over 5 years. That's incredible. I come to this well to remind us about process, and transparency, and the fact that we're setting a precedent. Whenever we have a bill that's going to impact the revenues of this state, we require something called a fiscal note. There's no fiscal note in your books about this bill. They've talked about the estimates on it. But where are they? They have not shared them with you. I just caution you that I always grew up under the notion that haste makes waste. And we have a perfect example of that when we redid our taxes on vehicles. And we've been coming back year after year to try and fix what we've done. I know we're excited about the opportunity of giving hard-earned money back to hard-working Georgians, but we need to be thoughtful about this process. We need to make sure we know the full impact of what we're doing here today. At the end of the day, it's not Christmas. And if we treat this like Christmas, we're going to have the January remorse when we can't pay our bills. And that's what happens in, maybe not in your community, but in our community, when we get too excited about Christmas, we can't make our bills in January. We got to think about the impact of what this is going to mean, not only now, but for legislators who come after us and for governors who come after this governor. I believe the advice that we were given at the beginning of the session was correct. We need to be thoughtful and take our time and learn the full impact before we make decisions. We have an obligation to make sure that we can take care of all the obligations of this state. And while we're the best state to do business, and we're very proud of that, but we're not the best state to retire. And we're not the best state to raise a family because we are lacking in some of the services and the resources that we need to make lives better in our state. So while this may be the best thing since sliced bread, there's a reason why these tax codes have not been changed in so very long, because it has to make sense. We have to protect our future. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to think about it. Think about what we're doing. Make sure that you can go home saying, I know what this is going to mean, but if somebody's telling you this is a $5 billion measure and you have not seen any estimates or any fiscal note, it's time for us to raise questions and say, let's go to a yellow light. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Teasley to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And today I rise in support of House Bill 918. And I want to extend a very sincere thanks to Governor Deal, Speaker Ralston, Chairman Powell, and Representative Estration on their work and their commitment to get this right. The process that we've gone through, I think, has been a good one. I serve on the Ways and Means Committee, and we have over and over again talked about this process and talked about the different concepts in this bill. And so I would respectfully disagree. I think the process has been excellent. See, I believe this is the right policy to reduce the tax rate on both our individuals and our businesses. And I want to speak to a couple of points. One, I want to thank again Representative Estration and the governor's team for recognizing that in extending a jet fuel sales tax exemption, we didn't do that for just one particular business at one particular airport. We recognized that a business input cost affects everyone. It affects our consumers, it affects the airline industries. In order to be able to provide more, when we tax their business input, it reduces their flexibility and reduces their ability to provide more services, more jobs for their employees, and certainly that cost, as we know, is passed on to the consumer. So I want to say thank you again for your work on that. And then let me close with this. I believe that to allow our taxpayers to keep more of their own money is not only good for our economy because it leads to more economic growth, but by allowing our taxpayers to keep more of their own money, I think that's good for our families. It's good for our small businesses. So with that, I will yield the well. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to give a little background on, from my understanding of House Bill 918. As a lot of you know, I am a CPA, and I kind of deal with numbers on a daily basis. So when the tax, I'm going to back up a little bit. So please, walk with me here a little bit. But back when the federal tax bill passed, it created a problem for a lot of states, all states across the country. At the time, states were looking at a windfall. Well, they call it a windfall. A windfall is really something that's unexpected, but we knew it was coming. So basically, it's a tax increase. That number at one point was $3 million. Then it was $3 billion. Then it was $4 billion. Then it was $5 billion. And at the time, the governor had said that we didn't want to do anything with it. We wanted to be conservative, and that had been the stance we've had in this body for many years. There were others, CPAs like myself, that said, wait a second, let's give back the money to the taxpayers. The simplest thing is a couple of quick lines to decouple. Basically, decouple. Because what happened when the federal government did their tax changes, they raised the standard deduction from, say, $12,000 for family to $24,000 for family. So last year, if you were itemizing $20,000, you were taking it on the federal level and the state level. Now, you're going to take that $24,000 at the federal level, but you'll get $3,000 at the state. That creates a huge gap that's going to be taxed. So the initial suggestion was decouple. Whatever you do at the feds, it's up to you and your family what you do at the state. At worst, you would be left the same. The governor went one step further than the original bill in House 918 and added increased exemptions, so you would actually make a little bit of money. So we would give you back what the federal government was going to take away from you and give you some more. But because we are so caught up in rates and not actual dollars, what we have done is to take away that decoupling and just cut the rates. I was sitting on my computer last night, I created a little program, and I said whatever numbers I punched in there, the average family in Georgia makes $65,018 according to the US Census. Now, let's assume that you have $15,000 in standard itemized deductions. Well, now you're gonna take the federal level standard deduction, then you'll take the state new $6,000, you'll end up with a $400 tax increase per family. Now, I know a lot of us have been walking around calculating numbers in our head, and we get the decimal point sometimes in the wrong space, but I would be happy to, if I had a fiscal note, I could probably look at it and say, no, maybe I'm not going down the right path, but I feel pretty confident that I'm going down the right path. I've talked to other CPAs, and they said the same thing. So if we were talking about a tax cut, that would be one conversation. What we're talking about is a tax increase to a lot of Georgians. So my only suggestion would be that we kind of slow down the process, actually look at the impact. If you don't believe me, call your spouse at home and say, look at our tax return last year. You come back to my desk, we'll pop it in the computer, and I'll tell you what you'll pay next year. Call your auntie up, call your cousin up, and let's see what happens and see what that bill looks like. It's going to be great. That 0.0025% rate cut does nothing when you're talking about 6% or 5.75% on $9,000, $10,000. If you make above $24,000 in itemized deductions, then you're fine. And I apologize if I'm getting into the weeds, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is a complicated issue, and no good tax bill gets done in 24 hours. As the whip said, in 2012, I voted against the car tag, and we've been fixing it ever since. I was one of 7 people, and I will be one of however many people today that vote against this bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield to any questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Dreyer to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As has been said before, there's not a fiscal note, so we're working with rough numbers. I'm working with the best numbers that we have. But in addition to the giving back the windfall, this bill looks like it'll cost the state of Georgia somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion over the next 5 years. That averages out to $100 million to $200 million a year. And I want us to think about what everyday Georgians are thinking when we make this decision. I want us to think about the trade-offs. What could we do differently rather than increase debt or reduce spending between $100 and $200 million a year each year over the next 5 years? One of those items is education austerity cuts. Because we cut so much spending during the Great Recession, we're still $160 million a year below what we are supposed to be spending on education. Okay? $167 million a year that could go to more teachers in the classroom. It could go to reduce furlough days, because there still are some furlough days. It could repair air conditioning units at schools. And it could improve transportation so that children aren't riding an hour each way to and from school. So if we pass this bill, we need to be prepared to answer to everyday Georgians why we are reducing the top tax rate and giving away money to big business instead of restoring the austerity cuts. The second thing we could do is we could implement the Georgia Work Credit Act. That act passed this House last year. It came out of Chairman Powell's committee, and it would give working Americans more money every year. That cost $150 million a year, and it's proven to reduce poverty. It's proven to move people to the middle class. It's proven to improve education results, and it's proven to increase health outcomes and infant mortality rates. So we need to be prepared to tell Georgians that we're cutting the top tax rate and giving away money to big businesses instead of implementing the earned income tax rate to actually lift people out of poverty. Third thing we could do is we could give our teacher retirees a cost of living adjustment that would cost $150 million a year. I know a lot of us have heard from teachers that they need that cost of living adjustment. But if we pass this bill, we need to be prepared to go home and say we cut the top tax rate rather than gave our teacher retirees who served our state for decades a cost of living adjustment. Another thing we could do is we could make tuition college or technical college tuition free, and we could implement a need-based college scholarship to our university systems for about $200 million a year. But ultimately, and we talked about this yesterday, Leader Trammell mentioned it, we could expand Medicaid for $136 million a year. We could get $1 billion a year from the federal government, and we could insure 600,000 Georgians, including 32,000 veterans. So we need to be prepared to go home and say we're cutting the top tax rate in Georgia rather than insuring 600,000 Georgians and 32,000 veterans. And we could also stop the closures of rural hospitals. We could say we've already lost 6 rural hospitals and we're going to lose more. And rather than having to answer for additional rural hospitals closed, we're going back and we're saying we're cutting the top tax rate and we're giving away money to big businesses. We're showing Georgians our values. And I'm voting no because I want to stand up for everyday Georgians and I want to stand with everyday Georgians. And that's why I'm voting no on this bill. I yield the well, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 918? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 918. The ayes are 134, the nays are 36. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. For what purpose does Representative Efstration rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House immediately transmit House Bill 918 to the Senate.
I don't know that that gets you anything, since the Senate shut down business before noon today.
No comment about that, Mr.
I understand.
Speaker. Yes, sir.
Nor do I. That was a neutral statement I just made. I'll entertain your motion. The gentleman has moved that House Bill 918 be immediately transmitted to the Senate. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is on its way to a dark and empty chamber. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 907.
House Bill 907 by Representative Fleming of the 121st to be titled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to vacation of office so as to provide for the appointment and election of a successor in the event of a vacancy in the office of District Attorney. This bill I referred to the Committee on Government Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Fleming to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 907 simply makes consistent our election law as it relates to district attorneys and judges. Once appointed, a DA will face the voters during the November general election, and they will then receive the standard 4-year term of office as any district attorney would. This bill is limited, Mr. Speaker, simply to that. It would make our code consistent in this area. That's all it does, but I certainly would be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 907 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 907, the ayes are 116, the nays are 56. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 695.
House Bill 695 by Representative Epps of the 144th to be entitled an act to Amend Code Section 40-2-86 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to special license plates promoting and supporting certain beneficial projects, agency funds, or nonprofit corporations. This bill item referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Epps to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I present to you House Bill 695, which creates a specialty plate that honors Georgia's working forests and would support the educational initiative of the Georgia Forestry Foundation. Georgia's Forestry Foundation's objective is to connect Georgia's 10 million citizens with its 22 million acres of working forest. All citizens of Georgia benefits from our working forests through clean air, clean water, and a myriad of other benefits. Among those are, as Chairman Nimmer has so eloquently stated here, is soft tissue as well. So, with that being said, Mr. Speaker, I respectfully ask for support of House Bill 695. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You had no questions. Is there any, I'm sorry, you did have a question. Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Coach Williams to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Do you have an example of what the plate would look like?
I do.
You do?
And I
At your
failed
desk?
to bring it.
Sir?
I do, but I failed to bring it. My apologies.
Thank you.
But I'll be glad to bring it and show it to you, sir.
Thank you.
You bring one and give it to the representative, won't you?
Yes, sir.
Be a nice gesture. I got you a tag there, Representative. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 695 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 695. The ayes are 169, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 835.
House Bill 835 by Representative Lott of the 122nd and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 11 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to taxes on tobacco products so as to provide for the issuance of special event tobacco permits to licensed dealers. This bill having referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Lott to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, members of the House. I'm here to speak on HB 835. This bill allows the Department of Revenue to issue a temporary license for off-premise sale of tobacco products. Currently, businesses are required to file under a separate sales tax ID for temporary off-premise sales. This bill does not affect any local smoking ordinance, and it only simplifies the sales tax filings from the business to the Department of Revenue. I'll yield for questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I yield for questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Henson to your left for a question.
Thank you. Will the lady yield?
I do.
If I'm reading this correctly, it looks like it would increase access to tobacco.
It doesn't change anything except for the filings to the Department of Revenue. Currently, they have the ability to get an off-premise, to function off-premise, but they have to have a separate sales tax ID to do it. And all this does is simplify it for their filing purposes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Henson. I yield the well.
You have no further questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 835 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 835. The ayes are 144. The nays are 24. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 714.
House Bill 714 by Representative Rogers, the 10th to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-1-8, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to safe
Clerk will suspend. We are still on the rules calendar. Gentlemen may continue.
To be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-1-8 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to safe operation of motor carriers and commercial motor vehicles, so as to update the reference date to federal regulations regarding the safe operation of motor carriers and commercial motor vehicles. This bill having referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Rogers to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Probably the simplest bill of the day. I present to you House Bill 714. It's the annual update of the Uniform Carriers Act. And basically all it does is make certain that we comply with federal regulations. We have to do this every year. The only change this year is we're changing the date from 2017 to 2018, much like the last 4 years. That's all we've done. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll stand for any questions. If not, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 714 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. and the clerk will unlock the machines.
Jason.
Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 714. The ayes are 169, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Representative Coach Williams, have you ever doubted that I'm a man of my word? I have you here a forestry tag. Now, I don't know what you're going to do with it. I don't know what you're going to put it on. Perhaps it could be heated and stretched. Stop, we are. I'm presenting you the first forestry tag. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 876.
House Bill 876 by Representative Corbett of the 174th and others to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 8-2-25 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating statewide application of minimum standard codes, adoption of more stringent requirements by local governments, adoption of standards for which state codes does not exist, and exemptions for farm buildings. This bill then referred to the Committee of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Corbett to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I bring before you House Bill 876 today for your consideration. This is the third bill to come out of the recommendations made by the Rural Development Council. You hear it all the time. This is a simple bill. This truly is a simple one-page bill that prohibits anyone from banning wood as a construction material so long as such use conforms to all applicable state minimum standard codes and the Georgia Fire Safety Code. So, the word minimum here can be very misleading when it's taken out of context. Minimum, when you look at the GPA to get into Georgia, I mean, you almost got to have a 4.8 to get in or something over a perfect score. I mean, they're very high achievers, overachievers. Georgia Tech. I know someone's son's trying to get into Georgia Tech. Right? They missed one question on the math part of the SAT. He doesn't meet that minimum standard. He's got to take that test again. So when you take that minimum word out of context, it's very misleading. So Georgia in 2012 adopted the International Building Code. And here's a list of current building code requirements that apply to new construction for all multifamily dwellings, Group R2, under the 2012 IBC. This is not a comprehensive list, but indicates primary features. Automatic fire suppression, which sprinkler system, smoke detectors, fire alarm systems, standpipes, fire extinguishers, fire resistance of building elements, floors, walls, ceilings have to meet a 1 hour minimum fire resistance rating. Fire resistance between dwelling units. They have to be fireproof between apartments, floors, walls. Special fire resistant separation between openings required between residential and merchant commercial buildings. And the list goes on and on. The national fire data from 2003 to 2007 reveal residential fire losses top $6.8 billion. However, less than 1% of these losses occurred in apartment buildings having sprinklers. Fires in sprinklers apartments, regardless of building construction material, are extremely rare compared to other residential fires. You know, while I believe in local control, I do, but I believe in consumer control, free market is much more important. You know, our Georgia tree farmers are good at what they do. Just ask Chad Nimmer; he can testify to that fact. Georgia, matter of fact, we're so good. Georgia is the #1 forestry state in the nation. Right here, 22 million acres of private forest land, $28.9 billion economic impact to the state, $37 billion to ecosystem. If you are breathing clean air and fresh water, think a tree farmer. That's where it's coming from. $721 billion tax revenue provided to state and local governments. 135,000 direct and indirect jobs. #1 in the nation, and we want to exclude them from a market. You know, but by banning lumber, you know, it harms our rural Georgia economies. It disrupts the free market. Georgia is home to more than 97 sawmills. Most of those, if not in rural parts of the state. You know, Metro Atlanta is a crucial downstream market for our Georgia tree farmers. And if we cut that market off, we interrupt stunt the growth of our rural parts of the state. You know, this bill doesn't require anyone to use lumber. It just levels the playing field. You know, I don't believe the government should be in the business of picking winners and losers. There's been some question brought up about the constitutionality of this bill. Do we have the right to do this? I'll read the article in the paragraph that states that that lies with this House right here. Article 4, paragraph 3, subsection C. And it's right above it, it talks about the codes, requirements, and stuff that local governments can do. But it says, nothing contained within this paragraph shall operate to prohibit the General Assembly from enacting general laws relative to the subject matters listed in subparagraph A of this paragraph, or to prohibit the General Assembly by general law from regulating, restricting, or limiting the exercise of the powers listed therein. You know, it's the state's responsibility to step in when local control is being abused. You know, building code amendments should only be used to address genuine safety concerns, not address local community issues. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield for questions, if there are any.
You got a few.
I would think so.
Chair recognizes Representative Raffensperger to your right for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
To my friend.
Is it not true, sir, that I am a licensed structural engineer and a licensed general contractor, and my business actually does what's called post-tension concrete buildings, but in all of our work we design with the International Building Code?
The gentleman knows of what he speaks.
And is it not further true, will the gentleman yield?
I do.
Is it not true in the competitive construction marketplace, the construction industry, that we get to fight and try and get our system selected, and if people are using wood frame construction, it's because it was the most economical solution, and that is the free market working its way?
That is a valid point. To that point, by eliminating wood, you drive up the cost of construction 30 to 50%. So,
another friendly question, if the gentleman would yield?
Absolutely.
Is it not further true that I was on the city council of Johns Creek before I came here? So I have full respect for local control, but when local control extends beyond its proper bounds and would actually restrict the type of construction that is used all over Georgia and all over the Southeast, that's going well beyond the scope that was ever intended for local control, and that this is a great bill. Thank you for reading it.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Henson to your left for a question.
This should be good.
Thank you. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that I currently have a city of Tucker in my district that on any buildings over 4 feet you can't use wood?
I think it's 3 stories probably, but I guess you know of what you speak.
It could be 3, but it's not in construction.
Yeah.
But that this would completely do away with their ordinance and what they feel is the safest and best way to address building in their city.
Well, I think if in the committee where we heard this bill, once we heard all the testimony, it wasn't about safety so much.
And isn't it further true that in Tucker, even with that ordinance, that builders want to be there and want to put many buildings up?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, isn't it further true that even with that ordinance in Tucker, that builders still want to come in and build?
I guess you know what you speak.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield
You're
away.
sounding less certain.
I'm not sure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield away.
You're walking out on a question? I mean, right in the middle of it?
Yes,
You can do that. Okay. We have other members that wish to be heard. Chair recognizes Chairman Tom Taylor to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In deference to the timber industry and my friend, Mr. Corbett, I'm going to stand in opposition to this bill. This is not, to me, in some of the more suburban and urban areas, we have a lot more dense development, and I think local control should be exercised, have the discretion to look at not just the quantity of development, but the quality of development. This imposes requirements that supersedes local control. Again, it's about the quality of development, not the quantity. And again, with deference to my friend Mr. Corbett, I'm standing in opposition. I'd urge you to vote this bill no. Thank you. I'll clear you to vote.
Gentleman has yielded the will. The chair recognizes the chair of the House Judiciary Committee to speak to the bill. I didn't realize you knew much about building there, Mr. Chairman, but
I've paid for a lot of them, I tell you. All my life I've been paying for buildings, it seems like. So outside the point of paying for buildings, I want to talk about the fact that my friend Mr. Corbin keeps using the term banning. We're not banning the issue of construction with wood. This is going strictly to, I think, what was passed by Sandy Springs. I don't know what the other cities have done, but Sandy Springs recognized the construction of these buildings, getting 5 and 6 stories of apartments, going up high-rise type apartments, being built out of wood construction, had concerns from a fire standpoint. And so what the city did was say if it's over 3 stories, there would need to be what they call a steel and concrete type structure, support structure, the main frame that holds the building up, and not just wood. And that was done because of the fear of the high, you know, we're in a dense area. Sandy Springs is a very dense area. And because of the way buildings are done now, next door to each other, the fear is that this does, in fact, present a fire hazard to the safety of people who live in those buildings. We all love wood. I'm a tree hugger. Nobody's doing away with trees. To my friend Mr. Nimmer, I've worked with him on some bills in the past dealing with trying to help the forest industry. We're not dealing with that. And it's not banning wood. It's really just recognizing above a certain height of 3 stories, you go to wood up to that size, but once you get above that, you've got to deal with a type of steel masonry structure of the main frame of the building. Done for safety reasons, I said. This is about local control. the city of Sandy Springs, when it enacted this ordinance, it didn't just do it as we got a right to do it. The building code is in effect. We have a minimum, list the words again, minimum building code standards of construction. Minimum. To get that changed, to get it approved, we had to submit the proposed ordinance to the State Department of Community Affairs, where it is reviewed. And it's reviewed from the standpoint of safety again. Is it appropriate to have this potential use of the size of the building and the construction materials above 3 stories as appropriate application of the law? And the Department of Community Affairs approved it. So it's become apparently a rallying point for the lumber industry. They came to the city council, spoke in opposition of it, and they had a full hearing about it. It lasted 2 meetings, and it was approved by the city council of Sandy Springs. Above 3 stories, you had to do a different type of construction. And that's what we're really dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. Not denying anyone the use of lumber and timber in construction, just the size of the building. If it's for a safety reason, the city of Sandy Springs did that. So if you believe in home rule, your cities, the city that you represent, if it has a density like the metropolitan areas do, it's an important right to have that ability for them to do it from a fire safety standpoint. And I ask you to please consider that and vote against the bill itself. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative speak to the bill.
Thank you. I come today and stand in opposition of this bill, not because it deals with forestry, but because it affects home rules. We have home rules that has been embodied by the 4 founders of this state to protect our localities and to allow them to rule themselves how best they think deemed fit for them. And the Georgia Constitution deals with this directly in Article number 9 of the Georgia Constitution, section number B, or section letter B. The General Assembly may provide law for self-government of municipalities to the end expressly giving the authority to delegate its power so that matters pertaining to municipalities may be dealt with without the necessary actions of the General Assembly. That is in direct accordance with what is going on with this particular bill that we have here today. I'm all for forestry. I have the pen on today. I voted for the specialty bill earlier, but we cannot erode the home rule laws of the state of Georgia. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will at this time if I have no questions. Mr. Speaker, I do yield the will.
You do have questions if you care to yield.
Yes.
Do you yield?
I yield for one question from my friend, and it better be friendly.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm in the state of Al Williams, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so if the chair doesn't want to recognize Representative Al Williams for a question, then you do not yield. Am I to understand that?
No, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield to my friend, Mr. Al Williams.
Did y'all practice this?
Yeah, we did.
Actually, he's not first on the order.
Yes, sir. I'll take one question. I have no
You'll
problem.
take one question.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
Isn't it true that when you design buildings, the wind loads in coastal areas require a much stronger structure, and it may be appropriate, particularly for a coastal city that has to endure wind loads that's different on the coast than maybe an inland city? Isn't it true that local ordinances might anticipate that and might require a more sturdy structure than what's contemplated in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, that could be true because I know you are an engineer and architect, and I'm a lawyer. So I'm not going to I guess, debate you back and forth in regards to that rationale, that reason. However, I would say if this bill dealt with onions from Vidalia or peaches from Peach County, I still would say that we do not need to get involved with home rules.
Let me say, isn't it true I'm trying to ask you a friendly question here?
You may be, but I sit on subcommittee with you, Mr. So I kind of know where your question could go. But I appreciate the friendly question, though.
You still want to talk to Representative Williams?
No, I yield at this time, Mr. Speaker. I'll talk to him in the ante room.
Chair recognizes Chairman Nimmer to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. It is a delight to come to this well today to speak on my friend Representative Corbett's bill in a great bipartisan effort, because rarely do we see a Republican bill introduced that has to do with a renewable resource in this state that has an economic impact of $35 billion, that touches every doorstep and every house and every breath that you draw in and every clean drop of water that you enjoy. I would submit to you, House, that a vote of support for this bill is a vote of support for the free market, to let people come in, bid with the construction materials that they so choose to bid with, and if approved, allow them the freedom to construct that building. That's what this vote is about. This vote is further affirmation to a bunch of hardworking Georgians who for generations and new investments have come in here, planted timber, sat on it for 20 plus years as a renewable resource. They don't tax and charge anyone for the clean air and the clean water they draw. They just ask for a fair shot in a free market. Now, we've heard Republicans speak against this bill, and Chairman Willard, I said it 3 times because I have 3 bills in your committee today. And I too am a tree hugger. I try to hug, and my team tries to hug as many as we can each day. And we try to contribute to that $35 billion impact. I respect the tree hugging perspective you bring, sir, and I believe in this state there's a place for preservation and there's a place for conservation. This bill is not that place for debate. This bill is about the place for free market and a vote of confidence and support in a bipartisan effort to show a $35 billion industry in this state that is the #1 state in this entire nation in the forest industry that we support them. I appreciate Mr. Corbett, Representative Corbett, bringing this bill, and I would ask for your unanimous support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're not yielding for questions. I'm trying to find somebody that'll talk to Representative Al Williams.
Sure, yes, sir. I'll take Al Williams. Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Is it not true? It's been a long journey to talk to the well today.
I am just privileged that it's me that you get to talk to, sir.
Is it not true that in Liberty County, my district, that we're heavily dependent upon forestry, probably second only to the military?
Oh, yes, sir.
Is it not further true that since I could not ask my dear friend Representative Bodie, would you be so kind as to ask him to bring that wood lapel and give it to you?
Yes, sir, I would. I didn't want to seem that way to take gifts back, but what we will be, I don't normally pull the vote record, but today I will. Thank you, Representative Williams. Mr. Speaker, if there are no further questions, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping I wouldn't have to come down here, but this bill was heard for hours in the Ag Committee meeting. We listened to people for it, and we listened to people against it. The bill says on line 15 and 16 that it talks about it conforms to applicable state minimum standard codes. The International Building Code Conference adopts these codes, and then the state adopts them for whatever building. It may be the tallest skyscraper in Atlanta to an outhouse in Pavo, Georgia. But it's built to those standard codes that the IBC recommends for us to go by. There are products out there now made from wood that are as strong as steel. The opposition we heard in Ag Committee, all we heard was about buildings being built and the fire hazard because the contractor might have some guy smoking and flip a cigarette, or they may be building a fire in a barrel to stay warm. That doesn't have anything to do with the strength of the material or the safety of whether the building is put up with steel or wood. Chairman Nemmer has probably more machines than I want to try to pay for, which is one of his tree hugging machines costs probably $700,000-800,000, and it's a mansion in anybody's subdivision. So with them doing what they're doing and we growing as much timber as we do in this state, which we are the #1 state for private forest land, it's beyond me why we are arguing on whether or not we can use wood where it is more economical and where the building contractor wants to use it. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would urge each and every one of us to take care of a product that Georgia grows and Georgians can use if they want to, and pass this bill. Thank you, sir.
Do you care? Do you yield? Not even to the majority leader? Trying to help you out here.
Thank you, sir. Since he stole my
Chair
secretary.
recognizes Leader Burns to your right for a question.
Chairman Yield.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you touched on it, but is it not true that around this world, not only in the United States, but around the world, that structural safety labs, when they run tests on building materials for that outhouse down in South Georgia, or the skyscrapers, the 3-story, 4-story buildings in Sandy Springs, or anywhere here in Atlanta and around the world, and even much taller buildings, that the #1 material we are finding now, stronger than steel, more stable than concrete, is timber.
Correct.
Wood, when it comes for its ability to withstand the shaking of an earthquake, wind damage, and certainly fire. That the #1 product in the world today to build buildings out of, whether they be residential or commercial, is wood, the timber that comes from Georgia.
That's correct. And Georgia timber on top of that. And when you're talking about fire, it's not necessarily the structure that the building is made out of, but it's the contents. Furniture, carpet, drapes, whatever, is where the fire safety hazard comes in. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 876 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Pizzo rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this is a surreal experience, as I have just been talked into a yes on this bill by Representative Gertler, of all people?
I'll have to take your word for it and see it. What purpose does Chairman Dollar rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that while I believe this is a good measure, I do represent a portion of the city of Sandy Springs, but isn't it also true, Mr. Speaker, that I have not heard from them on this issue not one time?
I'll be happy to share some emails with you from there. I'm convinced that everybody in Georgia that is opposed to this measure lives there. What purpose does Chairman Nimmer rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that referencing Representative Pizzo's statement, we should not be deterred to continue to vote yes for this bill?
If the gentleman so states, all those in favor of House Bill 876 are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 876. The ayes are 125, the nays are 43. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Allen Powell rise? You think you could rent Representative Tarvin's microphone from him?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to move that this House postpone action on House Bill 721 to the next legislative day.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 721 by Representative Powell, the 32nd to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-5-27 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating examination of applicants so as to revise the criteria by which the Department of Driver Services shall authorize licensed driver training schools to administer the on-the-road driving skills testing.
Chairman Powell has moved that this House postpone its consideration of House Bill 721 till the next legislative day. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is postponed until Friday, February 23rd. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 785.
House Bill 785 by Representative Nix, the 69th, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 12-8-2 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the definitions relative to solid waste management so as to modify certain definitions and enact new definitions. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Nix to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everybody just take a deep breath now. I'm hoping when I get through with this, we'll all join hands and sing Kumbaya. I bring to you House Bill 785, and this is a necessary piece of legislation to encourage innovative plastics recycling in Georgia. By using a practice known as plastics to fuel technologies, manufacturers are able to convert non-recycled plastics into fuels, petroleum products, and chemical feedstocks. You have on your desk a piece that was put on there first thing this morning that looks like this. And this describes the process that they use. They are able to take plastics that can't be economically recycled, such as plastic bags and styrofoam and packaging. They can take the contaminants, such as metal and glass, away from them, and then they're able to take those plastics and heat them in a process called pyrolysis, which is heated without oxygen. And from that, they're able to extract oil, fuels, and petroleum products. Now, House Bill 785 creates a statutory certainty for these industries that they will not be classified as a waste storage facility or a landfill. It clarifies that the plastics that they are using are recovered materials and not waste. And it also clarifies that the facilities that are doing this processing are not waste disposal facilities. This legislation will keep materials that are non-recycled plastics out of our landfills and allow them to be processed into useful materials. And also, this legislation will send a signal that Georgia is open to the expansion of this new technology that could potentially add $94 million in annual economic output to Georgia and certainly create jobs. If you look at the bill, I'll point out the important parts. On line 7 of the bill, we have the definitions relative to solid waste management. And it goes down and defines several things related to this process. On line 11, the gasification to fuels and chemicals is defined. On line 15, gasification to fuels and chemicals facility is defined. And then importantly, on line 18, it says that such terms shall not be considered a waste handling facility. If you look on page 2, line 32, it describes or defines pyrolysis, and then it talks about the products that can be extracted there, the oil, the diesel, the gasoline, home heating oil, other liquid fuels, and several other things. And then on line 37, it defines a pyrolysis facility. And on line 39, it says that a pyrolysis facility shall not be considered solid waste handling facilities or solid waste thermal treatment facilities. Line 57 gives the definition of solid waste handling that was in the code, but then on line 59 it says, but does not include the pyrolysis or gasification to fuels and chemical processes that this manufacturing uses. Finally, on line 63, we have the definition of a solid waste handling facility, but on line 65 it says, but does not include pyrolysis or gasification to fuels and chemicals facilities. What this does is it just simply means that these facilities cannot be classified as a waste handling facility or put in the same classification as a landfill. So in summary, this allows the deployment and expansion of the plastics to fuel technologies in Georgia. It's environmentally friendly. It encourages the recycling of materials which would otherwise go into the landfill, so it reduces the waste going into the landfill and allows an innovative business to grow and create jobs in the state of Georgia. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. If not, I will yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 785.
Looks like you have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
I will.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Natural Resources and Environment Committee, Chairman Smith, for a question. To your right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that the House Natural Resource and Environment Committee studied this issue at the end of the session last year and found it to be promising?
That is true.
And then is it further not true that you took the leadership on this bill and have brought this very innovative process to the state of Georgia for our consideration?
I was honored to be able to do that. Thank you.
You have another question if you care to yield.
I'll yield for one more, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Gilligan to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for bringing this bill, but I do have one question. In the Natural Resources Subcommittee or committee, when we were hearing about this, was it not true that the company that was presenting this actually said they would purchase the feedstock or the plastic? So they're buying our trash to turn it into fuel?
I believe that they do pay a fee for it when they use this in their process, yes.
So thank you very much for bringing this.
You're much welcome. Mr. Speaker, with that, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 785.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 785 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Rogers rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to House Rule 133, I'd like to ask to be excused from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the journal will so reflect. The machines are still open. All those in favor of the bill are voting green, and those opposed are voting red. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 785. The ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Jason Shaw for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, members. I'm going to defer to our newest member, Representative LaHood, that we're so proud of, for this order.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, myself and our Lowndes County representatives would like to recognize the 2018 class of Leadership Lowndes being here with us today. Class, please stand up and be recognized. Thank you for being here.
Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 743.
House Bill 743 by Representative Clark on the 98 to be entitled an act to amend Part 15 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act. This bill having referred to the Committee on Education, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Clark to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my colleagues, I bring House Bill 743, and I'm very passionate about this bill. I've been working on it for a few years. And it has to do with sudden cardiac arrest and bringing more training and awareness to that in schools. And also, it's known also as the Jeremy Nelson and Nick Blakely Sudden Cardiac Arrest Prevention Act. Those are two young men who died way too young. One of them was a young man in my district, and also Nick Blakely was one that my colleague Joyce Chandler, she lost in her district. And it happens across the state and probably a lot of our districts in the last few years. They say between 600 to 1,000 each year of young men and women will drop dead from sudden cardiac arrest. And so what this bill will do, it will 9th through 12th grade in high school, that at the beginning of each season, the kids will go over the symptoms and what to do if sudden cardiac arrest happens on the field of play. Also, I've made sure in the bill that the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the American Heart Association, they have said that they will provide material, the videos, and the sheets to go over the symptoms and awareness and all that on what to do. So it should not increase the cost. And I have also made sure to sit down with the state superintendent, the Georgia High School Association. I've got a thumbs up for that. So I made sure to sit down with everyone who it does affect to make sure we're on the same page. And also just something to think about also is by these kids being trained, having the awareness of knowing what to do if it happens, they will not just save kids on the field of play, but also they could be saving even someone in this room today who will be voting yes, hopefully on the bill. And also thinking it could also be a grandparent, because a lot of times the symptoms are you can catch the symptoms, and so by this, it will save lives. So I'd be glad to open up for any questions if any of my colleagues have any.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, I do, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Does any of this direct students to learn about automated external defibrillators? Those are the AEDs that you see mounted on the walls. It talks about to resuscitate the patient, to shock them. Does it talk anything about that?
We do give a little bit of flexibility on how on what education material they do use, but the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the American Heart Association, they all have material on that, so that's stuff that they will be providing. But great question, but likely they will be going over all that. Any other questions, Mr. Speaker?
No further questions.
Thank you. With that, I ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 743. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 743? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 743, the ayes are 165, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 787.
House Bill 787 by Representative Hilton of the 95th and others to be titled an act to amend Title 20, Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to education so as to revise certain provisions relative to charter schools. This bill having referred to the Committee on Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Hilton to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the House. Pleased to be with you this afternoon. As a member of the House Education Committee, under Chairman Coleman's leadership, our vision is to be the #1 state for K-12 education. We are laser focused on making sure all public schools in Georgia have the resources they need to succeed. Just as we do in policy areas ranging from public safety, healthcare, to transportation, we collect data, we evaluate the results, and we make recommendations for improvements. This same process was followed when drafting House Bill 787. Over the past 10 years, we have seen our state charter school program grow at a measured pace, reaching the 32 schools that we have today. State charter schools are public schools that are oftentimes asked to achieve higher performance while receiving less funding than traditional public schools. While the moderate growth of state charter schools in light of this funding gap should be commended, the data demonstrates to us that state charter schools continue to struggle to attract and retain talented educators. They struggle to open new grades and offer programs and services to our public student schools. House Bill 787 aims to accomplish 3 policy objectives. First, under the legislation, charter schools would be able to gain membership in what's called Regional Education Service Agencies, or RESA. RESAs provide a variety of support services, including continuing education for our teaching professionals. Second, the bill aims to improve the state supplement formula for state charter schools from the average of the lowest 5 school districts to a statewide average. There are also provisions included to supplement schools that operate at higher costs across our state. All public schools, traditional and charters, receive a base amount of QBE funding. However, traditional schools also receive a local portion, which is typically higher than the state supplement, thereby creating a gap between traditional schools, public schools, and state charter schools. House Bill 787 doesn't eliminate the gap, but it helps us move toward narrowing that gap. It's worth noting that this additional funding would not be taken from our existing K-12 budget, but from our overall state budget, thereby effectively increasing our overall K-12 spending here in Georgia. Finally, the legislation also provides a mechanism for what's called forward funding, which would enable charter schools to receive funding to cover projected student growth within a specific grade level. It is important to note that schools already receive a form of forward funding called horizontal growth when the Commission approves an additional grade. As a legislative body, we are bound by our state constitution to provide an adequate education to all public students in Georgia. This includes supporting all forms of public education. House Bill 787 provides much needed and measured support for a segment of our public schools. I would ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 787. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions.
Chair recognizes Representative Cantrell to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Representative Hilton, isn't it true that that you presented this bill before my education subcommittee?
I did.
Isn't it further true that although the room was packed, that not one person in the room spoke against the bill?
You are correct.
And isn't it also further true that our own Department of Education for our state supports this bill?
You are correct. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Whip, Representative Hughley, to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true that these state charter schools were schools that bypassed the locals in order to get the charter because for some reason they were not successful in getting chartered through the local process? Is that not true?
Oftentimes they're forced to do that. I think the first preference would be a local, but they oftentimes get shunned by the locals, and therefore they have to approve it. They have to apply at the state level.
Isn't it further true that, can you tell me what is going to be the difference in the funding now that we're going to this new funding formula? What would an average school or the school that you're most familiar with, how will their state portion change? Because we're going from the lowest 5% to an average. So what does that mean for the average school?
I don't have it broken down by the average school, but right now our state charter budget is around $220 million. This would add an additional $17 million to that budget.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Petrie to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
Isn't it true, sir, that right now we have a huge disparity between the funding for our traditional public schools and the funding for our public charter schools?
That is true.
And isn't it, do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that that creates a situation of inequity in how we treat our children in the public school system?
Yes, currently it's not equitable. A similar public school student does not receive the same funding if he's attending a traditional school and then moves to a state charter school.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You do not have any more questions.
Great. I appreciate your favorable consideration. I yield the well.
We have members that wish to be heard on the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Stovall to speak to the bill.
Good afternoon, members. I rise in support of House Bill 787 and as a co-signer. If you're truly an advocate for public schools, then you should vote yes. Let me lay the foundation of why a yes vote for 787 is a no-brainer. What is the definition of public schools? Is it funded by taxation in whole or in part? Are they mandated for or offered to all children without a fee within the geographical area they serve? The answer is yes. So ask yourself, are charter schools public schools? Are magnet schools public schools? Are international baccalaureate IB public schools? These are all non-traditional public schools. What do they have in common? The funding by taxation without a fee in a certain geographical area. What does charter different? What makes charters different from magnet and IB schools? The structure of the governance and the admission process. Magnet and IB can handpick which students can attend based on test scores. The students have to maintain a certain GPA or they will be withdrawn from magnet and IB programs, which are non-traditional public schools. I attended Southside High School and graduated from the Informational Technology Magnet program. You want to discuss segregation within a public school, then that's what magnet and IB schools do. But that's an argument for another day. Charter schools can't discriminate on who they admit for admission. They must accept all students, just like traditional schools. They have a contract agreement, which is a petition, which must be followed or it will be closed. Why don't we do the same for traditional schools which are low performing? If charter schools were so bad and so discriminatory, why did the civil rights legend Rosa Parks petition the city of Detroit to open a charter school, like I mentioned earlier in the morning order? You also heard Justice Hines speak today about the amount of money we spend on juvenile justice and adult prisons and the reform efforts. Well, I'm all about prevention, which you can make a difference in the lives of these students who attend the state charter schools, which don't receive local taxes. These state charter schools don't receive the same level of funding as traditional schools. They don't have the same access to resources. When traditional schools don't perform academically, they can go on for perpetuity, while state charter schools can be closed when not performing or there are board leaders' problems. I have been a state board chair, and when I took over as a leader for the governance board, which was doing bad and the academic performance was low, eventually that particular school was closed by the commission. If you believe public money should go to public schools and you still aren't convinced that charter schools are indeed public schools, then how many of you or your family members attended a private college and received the Pell Grant, the Hope Grant, or scholarship? Why is it okay for public dollars to be used for higher ed and those institutions can still pick and choose who can attend, just like magnet and IB schools do? Yet the elementary, middle, and high school students who need the free choice for education by attending a charter school can't have it. Don't be double-minded. Let's talk about the state fully funded QBE. How many of you all really know and understand the QBE formula? I have held the Educate Georgia Summit for 3 years, attended many conferences and even listening sessions with highly educated administrators, educators, parents, students, board members, and legislators. I am yet to find more than 5 people who can fully explain this formula. The reality is that the state won't be able to fully fund QBE, and was aware of that when it was enacted, that it would be an arduous task, especially with over half of our budget going to education. I invite you to visit a state charter school or speak with their teachers to see what they are able to do on a tight budget, receiving currently the same as the 5 lowest districts in this state. What we can do in Georgia is fully allow our parents of this state to choose the best education environment for their children. This is what HB 787 will do. It will ensure that public charter schools are funded at a level which will improve the quality of education for all children. As a state, we have an obligation to all children, whether they are in non-traditional schools or not. Your yes vote will speak to the future of our students in Georgia, that education is important and should be freely accessible to them. Charter school students are still students who live in our community. Stop pitting these students against each other like it's presently done. If you're truly an advocate for public schools, then show it with your yes vote, because I will. Mr. Speaker, I will stand for questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes, Chairman Dickey has waived. Chair recognizes the Speaker Pro Tem to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to provide some perspective on state charter schools, particularly for my colleagues on both sides of the aisle who were elected after 2012. In 2012, the House and the Senate approved a constitutional majority with over 2/3 support, with bipartisan support, to allow the state to authorize public charter schools. It was the first time we had such type of schools. Voters approved the measure in November by 58%. Not us, but voters. It passed in almost every county in the state and almost every House district in the state, both Democrat and Republican. In fact, Clayton County topped all of them at 71%. The constitutional amendment followed a sharply divided Supreme Court decision, 4-3, striking down a 2008 law that allowed the state to authorize such schools. So it was in 2008 that we first began authorizing them, and then they were struck down. We had to come back with a constitutional amendment. Prior to 2008, what spawned this state charter school idea was that local school boards had made it clear that charter schools were unwelcome. In 2007, local school boards denied every single startup charter school application in the entire state. In 2008, 25 of 27 applications at local school boards were denied. From 2008 to 2012, 4 were approved in the entire state in sum over those 4 years by local school boards. But since the state has offered an alternate authorizer, the state, through the State Charter School Commission, more local school boards have approved charter schools, which is, as my friend Representative Scott Hilton mentioned, that is the first choice, because the funding is more in keeping with how we fund public schools. It's always preferable for that. But we are bound to fulfill the constitutional mandate that it is a primary obligation of the state to provide an adequate education for all public school students, including those public school students taught by public school teachers at public charter schools. The mandate cannot always be fulfilled through attendance zones. There are 113 locally approved and state authorized charter schools, and they provide options for students from single gender to longer school days to smaller schools. Sometimes a parent believes their child simply needs a different environment. This bill does not seek to answer whether or not the state should authorize charter schools. Voters resoundingly settled that question in 2012. The bill does not seek to influence parents on whether or not they want to send their child to a charter school. 1.7 million students' parents have chosen traditional schools, but there are thousands of students that remain on wait lists throughout the state who want to attend those 113 local and state authorized charter schools. This bill only addresses funding, and as Representative Hilton said, it's good for the legislature to have a history of data before we make a decision to change something. After 10 years of experience with state authorizing, we've learned that the current funding level, which I put together, does not adequately fund state charter schools and public school teachers. The projected $16 million cost will be spread across the entire $22 billion budget, no different than a targeted tax exemption for nonprofit charity clinics or food banks. No different than state patrol officer salary increases or the additional school nurse funding that we approved a few years ago. The 29 existing state charter schools, and there are 3 more that are getting ready to open, located throughout the state, of them, half are in the greater metropolitan area, half throughout the rest of the state, and then there are 2 virtual schools, the third is getting ready to be closed by the State Charter School Commission, have students in every county in this state. Public education policy has been and should be a shared effort by state and school boards to deliver the best educational opportunities for students. This partnership and a lot of hard work has led to an 80% graduation rate. When I came in, it was 67%. I'd call that tremendous progress. Continuing that trend, though, will require additional hard work and a commitment to every public school student, including those that are educated in a public charter school. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions.
You have no questions.
Well, thank you. With that, I encourage you to vote for this bill, and with that, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a minority report. There is a minority report, and under the rules of the House, 20 minutes are allotted for the presentation of the minority report. The chair recognizes Representative Dickerson to deliver the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I come to you in opposition of this bill. Public schools do not have the authority to choose their students. In Georgia, there are currently 181 school districts who are under the jurisdiction of local boards of education. Each board determines the appropriate school zoning requirements based on population and need. These entities are unable to choose the students that live in their counties because all zoning is done in accordance with population data. The 2019 budget does include a slight increase to public schools, 3.7% to account for enrollment growth. But for the 17th year in a row, QBE has not been fully funded. I think you've heard that before. Anything that further erodes resources and funding from our public schools are not good for our children and families. We did not have a fiscal note in subcommittee when this bill came to us. We were given a fiscal note in the committee hearing. And in that note, there would be a $17 million impact to the general budget. Mr. Speaker, I yield the bell to the rest of my time to Representative Lopez on this minority note. Thank you.
Lady has yielded the balance of her time to Representative Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, colleagues. I will try to make this as short and concise as possible. I rise today to urge you to vote no on HB 787, seeking to increase funding for state charter schools to an estimated cost, as we had heard, of approximately $17 million and growing as continual increases in state charter schools are approved through the commission. This is an increase, again, in taxes to a tax burden to our constituents. We were told that this funding would come from the state's general fund and not from the education budget. So I want to start off with the fact that if we have state funds available, then let's us fund the QEB formula, as we have heard a couple of occasions here. The ongoing austerity cuts for the 17th year in a row leaves our students with less funding than the formula calculus that they receive. And if we were to actually cover or at least reduce the austerity cut, we would in fact actually increase the funding to the state charter schools, just as this bill intends to do, because their funding is directly related and correlated to the funding that the traditional public schools receive. Furthermore, we've heard that there is a monetary gap between our state charter schools and our traditional public schools. That was actually purposeful, precisely because in exchange for a reduction, less money than the traditional public schools, state charter schools have flexibility and autonomy and some freedom from some of the state and local regulations that traditional public schools must abide by. Furthermore, we continue to discuss about some of these impacts across a broad range of issues that we have in our state to rural areas. This is no different. As was previously stated, the funding to these state charter schools are primarily, at least more than half, go to the Metro Atlanta area, creating greater divestment of funding to rural school systems that would, again, actually benefit. Rural traditional public schools would actually benefit if we funded the QEB formula. Now, some of us may have heard during committee hearing that this $17 million was a drop in the bucket or a rounding error. Now, if that were true, if we talk about, again, the fact that in Georgia we have, both in metro and rural areas, we're grappling with a teacher shortage. And as a matter of fact, there was a survey in 2016 done by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission stating that we have about 2,000, at that time, 2,352 full-time vacancies for school teachers. What would $17 million pay for in our education? With the average teacher salary of about $53,000 per the Georgia Department of Education, that would amount to about 320 new teacher salaries with that drop in the bucket. Now, furthermore, we've heard, and Representative Dreyer earlier mentioned several of the things that we are obligated and we should, as a responsibility of the state, of this General Assembly, to fund. Additional things that we can fund in the education area would be the bill that we passed last year, a very important bill, bipartisan bill, HB 338, that was intended to improve our traditional public schools that are underperforming. There are many services and many programs that the Chief Turnaround Officer needs to provide to these schools. $17 million would go a long way to actually fulfill the promise of the bill that we passed last year. And again, we can't forget that we keep insisting that we're the #1 state to do business in. We cannot continue to do that if we're also not the corresponding #1 state to educate our children. And yes, for clarity, as has been stated, charter schools are in fact public school system options. Our legislative body has authorized their existence. I mentioned that flexibility in exchange for higher accountability in ensuring that they raise student achievement. In fact, the State Charter School Commission of Georgia states that it has the power to approve or deny petitions, renew or not renew, or terminate state charter contracts. State charter schools do not have a state constitutional right to exist. Their existence must be earned, and if they fail, they in fact may be closed, as has mentioned, not the case of traditional public schools. On the other hand, and most importantly, something that had been highlighted and what I want to leave you with is re-understanding what our constitutional rights and responsibilities are. Traditional public schools are not, and I'll repeat again, they are not an option. They are our state constitutional right and responsibility. And that is why our Georgia State Constitution under Article A states, and I quote, "The provision of the adequate public education of citizens shall be the primary obligation of the state of Georgia, our primary obligation here in the state of Georgia. So a vote for this bill is a vote to not keep to our constitutional responsibilities to fully fund traditional public schools. I urge you again to vote no on HB 887, and Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 787 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does the chairman of the Education Committee, Chairman Coleman, rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that charter schools are public schools? Is that not correct?
That's the understanding of the chair.
And isn't it true that it is true that we give them the extra flexibility to do the job? And isn't it also true that this House several years ago has given all public schools, including the traditional, as we call public schools, the flexibility also? And isn't it true, Mr. Speaker, that we passed House Bill 338 to take care of some of the problems we have in our traditional schools, and we're just simply, isn't it true, trying to pass this bill in order to allow public schools that are charter schools to have the same funding as the traditional schools? Isn't that true?
I know the gentleman believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative Stovall rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that a no vote today will be a vote to isolate and punish students whose parents chose to attend charter schools?
I know the lady believes that very strongly to be the case. Members who are voting green in favor of the bill and red in opposition to the bill, and the machines are open. Machines are open. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 787, the ayes are 111, the nays are 54. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 826.
House Bill 826 by Representative Cobble of the 111th to be entitled an Act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 35 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding law enforcement officers and agencies, so as to provide that an alarm monitoring company may contract out the requirement of attempting to verify an alarm prior to requesting law enforcement to be dispatched to the location of the alarm. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Cobble? Is there a member of this body named Cobble? There is? Is that you? I don't remember seeing you here when we began this session. So wait a minute. Let me see if I understand. You were not here on opening day, and today you have a bill to present to this body. You must be amazing. Either that or Chairman Maxwell was asleep at the wheel the day you presented your bill. Chair recognizes the individual who represents himself to be Representative Cobble to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise today to bring you House Bill 826. This bill would provide that a banking institution or a wholesaler or retailer of firearms or pharmaceuticals could contract with an alarm monitoring company for direct dispatch of law enforcement on the activation of an intrusion alarm. The bill does not impact any other alarm user and it's supported by the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I would yield for questions.
All right, well, that was the part of orientation you missed. Chair recognizes the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Coomer, to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I will.
Let me say I'm alarmed at the speed with which you've been getting your bills through this process. It's alarming because you've arrived here and worked like a house on fire. I'm glad somebody got that. And you've really dispatched your duty with great speed. I'm in my 8th year here in the General Assembly, and I haven't had a single bill come to the floor or get passed out of a committee this year. I was hoping you could tell me how to do that. Point of order, Mr. Speaker. You're not allowed to help the member in the well.
Do you further yield?
I will.
Okay, let's, your delegation mate here, Chairman Welch, to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I will.
Is it not true that you had to amend this bill in committee?
The gentleman knows which he speaks.
And did you get the committee's support with all those amendments that you proposed?
I did.
And I think there were numerous words that you cobbled together to make this bill pass. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, with that, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for a favorable consideration of this body for House Bill 826, and
You're leaving a lot of questions on the table.
And I regret to do so, but I will yield the well. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 826 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 826. The ayes are 167, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 853.
House Bill 853 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating the short title and purpose of the Quality Basic Education Act, so as to provide that children placed in the psychiatric residential treatment facilities pursuant to a physician's order may not be charged tuition. This bill having referred to the Committee on Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 853 provides that children placed in licensed psychiatric residential treatment facilities by a physician's order may not be charged tuition, ensuring that dollars will follow all public school students with long-term care needs. This will mean that they will receive their educational instruction during treatment and not fall behind, therefore staying on track, matriculating with their grade level peers. The legislation strengthens the collaboration and communication between the school district and behavioral health provider to meet the whole child and promote the most favorable outcome. Their IEP would travel with them, the dollars would follow with them. In certain situations, there are only 6 of these hospitals, and in certain situations, a district may not send that money forward. A child can be there for a minimum time, could be a few days, or it could be a much more longer extended time, and it is very important that while they are becoming mentally healthy, they are staying on track. Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I will take them. If not, I would ask that the members please vote favorably to help our students in these residential treatment facilities.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 853 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 853. The ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 814.
House Bill 814 by Representative Williams, the 145th and others to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 16 and Title 45 of the Fiscal Code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions regarding coroners, so as to provide that the county governing authority may establish salaries and benefits of coroners and deputy coroners. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Williams to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it's getting late in the day. Ask for your consideration on House Bill 814. This is a local control bill regarding coroners' salaries and benefits. For counties with populations in excess of 34,999, current law requires local legislation to set the pay and benefits for the coroner and any deputy coroners. This bill allows the County Board of Commissioners to set salaries so long as the salary is not lower than what the statute allows or what local legislation has already prescribed. The Georgia Association of Coroners and ACCG both are in support of this bill. I'll yield to questions, Mr. Speaker.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Pizzo to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Refresh my memory. What business are you in?
I'm in the funeral business.
Okay. So there's no collusion going on with you and coroners to get more people through your business's doors?
Never.
I just want to be absolutely certain.
Never. No,
okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Thank you. I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 814. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 814 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 814. The ayes are 162, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. For what purpose does Chairman Powell rise? What purpose does Chairman Dempsey rise?
To make a motion,
State your motion.
I move that the rules be temporarily suspended so that a bill may be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
On the lady's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned for committee. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Dempsey of the 13th be entitled an act to amend Chapter 25 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the Georgia Technology Authority.
Governmental Affairs. For what purpose does Chairman Hatchett rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so that a bill may be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Hatchett of the 150 to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 3 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the sales tax for educational purposes.
Judiciary. For what purpose does Representative Gertler rise?
I'd like to make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move House Bill 490 from Judiciary to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee. Both chairmen are in agreement.
You need to let the clerk's office know. If you'll come down and work out that with them, I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does Representative Rutledge rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that Senate Bill 263 move from intergovernmental coordination to governmental affairs. Both chairmen are in agreement.
Representative Rutledge moves that Senate Bill 263 be withdrawn from the Intergovernmental Coordination Committee and recommitted to the Governmental Affairs Committee. The clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 263 by Senator Jeffries of the 17th be entitled an act to incorporate the city of Eagles Landing.
On the gentleman's motion that Senate Bill 263 be withdrawn from the Intergovernmental Coordination Committee and recommitted to the Governmental Affairs Committee, is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. What purpose does Chairman Willard rise?
Rise to make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
I move that the rules of the House be suspended for the purpose of having a bill read for the first time and assigned to a committee.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? The chair hears none. The clerk will read the caption.
On number House Bill by Representative Willard, the 51st to be entitled, an act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the general provisions regarding courts so as established within the Judicial Council the Office of Business Cases.
Judiciary. Did Gert? Okay. What purpose does Representative Gertler rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move House Bill 490 from Judiciary to Public Safety, Homeland Security Committee. Both chairmen are in agreement.
Representative Gertler has moved that House Bill 490 be withdrawn from the Judiciary Committee and recommitted to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 490 by Representative Gertler, the 8th, and others to be entitled, an act to amend Part 2 of Article 13, Chapter 6, and Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to special provisions for motorcycles relative to the uniform rules of the road.
On the gentleman's motion that House Bill 490 be withdrawn from the Judiciary Committee and recommitted to the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. What purpose does Majority Caucus Whip Coomer rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move the rules be temporarily suspended so that a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee.
On the gentleman's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended so a bill can be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Coomer, the 14th to be titled, an act to amend Code Section 16-11-129 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to weapons carry licenses.
Judiciary non-civil. What purpose does Chairman Tanner rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that House Bill 781 be recommitted from the general calendar to the committee from whence it came.
And what committee was that?
Education.
Chairman Tanner moves that House Bill 781 be withdrawn from the general calendar and recommitted to the Education Committee. The clerk will read the caption.
House Bills number 781 by Representative Tanner, the 9th, to be entitled, an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 8 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to county sales and use taxes.
On the gentleman's motion that House Bill 781 be withdrawn from the general calendar and recommitted to the Education Committee, is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. For what purpose does Chairman Allen Powell rise?
Be recognized for motion.
He's on Representative Tarvin's.
To be recognized for motion.
State your motion.
I move that House Bill 721 be sent back to the Rules Committee for a little bit of work on it.
Chairman, this is the same measure that we postponed to the next legislative day earlier.
Yes, sir.
Now we're sending it back to the Rules Committee. On the gentleman's motion that House Bill 721 be recommitted to the Rules Committee, is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. We have several announcements, and we have several committees that we're expecting will be meeting this afternoon. So if you have an announcement, be up front, and we're going through them quickly. Chair recognizes Chairman Hitchens for an announcement.
The Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee meeting scheduled for this afternoon is canceled.
Chair recognizes Chairman Richard Smith for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House Insurance Committee, we will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. You probably won't get an announcement. My administrative assistant failed and she had injured her ankle and had to leave. So be there tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, 606 CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tankersley for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Intergovernmental Coordination Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment in the anteroom for just a brief few minutes. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Coleman for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Education Committee, full committee, 606 CLOB. Education Committee have a big full agenda. I need you all there. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Reeves Judiciary Non-Civil Subcommittee will meet in room 415 of the CLOB immediately upon adjournment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Tanner for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Transportation Subcommittee for Resolutions will meet immediately upon adjournment in 5:06. We will then have the Transit Subcommittee and then the full committee. The full committee will be approximately 1 hour after adjournment. Please make every effort to attend.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker. Members of Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, we're going to meet in 403 upstairs as soon as you can get up there. We've got only one bill, not two bills. I think we can handle it quickly, and I know we all got things to go to. I've got another committee I need to go to also. I think we can handle this with great vigor and get it out of there. Please come. 403 upstairs. Thank you, Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Watson for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small Business Development will meet immediately upon adjournment in room 515, CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jay Powell for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Subcommittee of Ways and Means on Public Finance and Policy will meet at immediately upon adjournment in 406 CLOB, not 133 CAP, so 406 CLOB. And immediately upon adjournment of that meeting, the full Ways and Means Committee will meet in room 406 CLOB. We only have 10 bills on the agenda. We'll be out in about 15 minutes, so please come.
Chair recognizes Chairman Darlene Taylor for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Insurance, Life and Health Subcommittee will meet immediately upon adjournment in CLOB 515. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Ballinger for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Juvenile Justice Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We have a couple of very important measures that we're going to be hearing, so I encourage all you members to be there tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Morris for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Banking Committee will be meeting immediately upon adjournment at the Capitol, 341. We will be voting on House Resolution 676, hearing for House Bill 902. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler for an announcement.
The Setzler Subcommittee of Judiciary Non-Civil will meet immediately upon adjournment of the Reeves Subcommittee, taking up HB 768.
The chair now recognizes for a motion the Majority Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I move this House stand in recess until 5 p.m. today and then stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Friday, February the 23rd, 2018.
The Majority Leader has moved that this House be in recess until 5 o'clock p.m. today, whereupon we would stand adjourned until tomorrow, Friday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. All those who favor the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House will be in recess until 5 o'clock p.m., whereupon we will be adjourned until Friday morning, February the 23rd at 10 a.m.